I wasn't supposed to find it. Not there, not in the ruins where silence clung like a ghost. The colony had been left to rot after the war, fenced off with warning beacons flashing red in the dust-choked wind. Drones patrolled the skies, their metallic wings glinting in the pale sunlight, reminding anyone foolish enough to enter that this place was forbidden. But survival doesn't ask permission, and I had long since learned that scavenging in dangerous places was sometimes the only way to eat. The ruins were jagged bones of a once-living city. Towers broken in half like snapped ribs. Streets buried under ash and twisted steel, air thick with the smell of rust and scorched stone. I picked carefully through the rubble, looking for anything that could be sold. Metal scraps, intact circuitry, even just sealed food packets that somehow hadn't spoiled. Most days I found nothing but shards of glass and echoes of a people long gone. That day was supposed to be the same. But then my boot brushed against something soft in the dirt, something that didn't belong. I froze, kneeling to clear away dust with my gloved hands. A thin leather-bound book emerged, weathered but intact, impossibly out of place among the shattered stone. My first thought was that it couldn't be alien. They never used paper, never wasted time on something so fragile. And yet, here it was, heavy with age, stitched together with care. I opened it, pages crackling faintly, and saw writing. Not human writing, alien script, curling and sharp, alive with rhythm. My translation patch flickered, struggling for a moment before the words reshaped into English. The first line stopped my breath cold. Asterisk, if anyone ever finds this diary, know that I dream of standing beneath the stars of Earth. But I am forbidden. They say it is impossible. They say humans would never allow me. Asterisk. For the first time in years, I felt like I was holding something more dangerous than any weapon. Someone's secret. Someone's heart pressed between fragile pages. And it was calling to me. I should have left it behind, but I couldn't. The moment I carried the diary back to my quarters, it felt like it had weight beyond its size, like it carried more than just paper and ink. I lit a dim lamp and turned page after page until my eyes ached, unable to stop. The words inside weren't just words. They were pieces of a soul, spilling out through shaky handwriting that told me the writer had pressed each letter with care, maybe even fear. She described her world with a tenderness that felt like a wound. Streets that once bustled with life now quiet, laughter of her people silenced under the shadow of defeat. She wasn't bitter, not in the way I expected. Instead, there was a kind of fragile wonder, as though she still clung to hope even as everything around her crumbled. She wrote about humanity with curiosity, not hatred. While others feared us, she dreamed about us. Page after page, she imagined Earth as though it were heaven itself, oceans roaring endlessly, forests older than time, skies that stretched wide and endless without smoke or ash. She wrote about wanting to run barefoot across grass, to feel rain on her skin without the sting of chemicals. Simple things. Small things. Yet each desire carried the weight of impossibility. And there it was again and again, her belief that no human would ever want her there. That even if she begged, even if she proved herself harmless, we would never see her as anything more than an enemy. Her words settled in me like a stone in my chest. It wasn't just a diary anymore. It was a plea. A fragile voice reaching across a gulf of war and blood, asking if even one human might listen. And somehow, that human had to be me. The more I read, the harder it became to ignore. I tried convincing myself it was just a relic, that the girl who wrote it was probably long gone, buried beneath the rubble with the rest of her people. But her words had a way of following me, whispering in the back of my mind when I closed my eyes. I could almost hear her voice, soft but unyielding, daring me to prove her wrong. So I started asking questions. Quietly at first. A name here, a rumor there. In the back alleys of New Haven's trade markets, I bought drinks for smugglers, slipped credits to informants, and pretended my interest was academic curiosity. But I wasn't fooling anyone for long. Whispers spread faster than fire. A human looking for an alien girl? That wasn't the sort of thing you asked without drawing attention. Information trickled in fragments. Her family had been disgraced after the war, stripped of whatever status they once held. She had been seen scribbling nonsense on scraps of fabric, or speaking out loud to herself about faraway places no one cared about. Some called her a dreamer. Others called her broken. Most had forgotten her name. But I didn't forget. Piece by piece, The trail narrowed, pointing me toward the outskirts, a district where the unwanted and the uncounted were dumped like refuse. It was a place even humans avoided. Disease, gangs, hunger. If she was there, she had to be desperate just to survive. When I finally walked those crack streets, I almost turned back. The stench of decay clung to everything, and eyes watched from shadows with quiet hostility. Yet I pressed on, because in my hand was a diary, and in my chest was the weight of her impossible dream. Somewhere in this wasteland, she was waiting. She sat alone in the corner of the cantina, half hidden in the flicker of failing neon. The scarf around her head was frayed, pulled tight to conceal the ridges of her heritage. Her posture was small, folded inward as though she was trying to disappear into the cracked booth. But I knew. The shape of her shoulders, the way her eyes darted nervously at every sound. I had read those movements 100 times in her words. I slid the diary onto the table. The moment her gaze fell on it, her breath caught. Her hands, thin and trembling, clenched around her cup, as if it were the only anchor she had left. For a long time, she didn't speak. The silence stretched between us, heavy and brittle, until at last she whispered, You read it." Her voice was almost too soft to hear, but it was laced with terror, as if admitting the truth might bring punishment. I nodded. I expected her to recall, maybe even run. Instead, she lowered her eyes, shame carving deep lines across her delicate features. I realized then how dangerous hope must have felt for her, how dangerous it must have been to write dreams she was told were impossible. So I leaned forward, my voice steady but quiet, and said, "You want to see Elf? Then I'll take you." Her eyes snapped up, wide with disbelief. For a heartbeat, she simply stared, her lips parting as if the words couldn't fit into her world. And then, just faintly, a light flickered there. Hope, raw and desperate. We talked until the cantina emptied, until the night outside fell silent. She told me her name, Lyra, and how writing those pages had been the only way she kept herself from breaking. And I promised her I wouldn't let that dream die. Helping Lyra meant stepping into a fire I could never walk back out of. From the moment I gave my word, I knew every authority, every soldier still loyal to the old scars of war, would see us as traitors, me for aiding her for daring to believe she could walk among humans. But once you hold someone's dream in your hands, you can't just set it down. I started pulling favors, calling in debts I'd sworn never to use. Old smugglers I'd run cargo with, black market forgers who could slip a new identity past even military scanners. Every step was risk piled on risk, but Lyra never once asked me to stop. She simply followed, quiet, her eyes carrying a mixture of fear and something stronger, trust. But the galaxy is never silent for long. Word spread faster than I could cover it. Whispers turned to bounties, and by the time we reached the shuttle port, hunters were already waiting. The air stank of ozone as alarms bled, and the hum of charging blasters echoed down the steel corridors. We ran, feet pounding metal, her hand clutching mine, her breathing sharp with panic. Energy bolts slammed into walls around us, searing hot and blinding bright. At one point we ducked behind a half-sealed cargo door, my chest heaving, fear clawing at me. The thought came, if I let her go, maybe they'd spare me. Maybe I could survive. But then I looked at her, clutching the diary to her chest like a shield, her eyes shining with the same fragile hope she'd written in those pages. And I remembered her words, asterisk, if only one human would take my hand, asterisk. I tightened my grip on her fingers. No matter what waited ahead, I wasn't letting go. The shuttle ride was chaos. We barely made it through the last checkpoint, alarms howling behind us as the engines roared to life. The cabin was dark, cramped, the smell of burning fuel seeping through the vents. Lyra sat pressed against the viewport, trembling, clutching her scarf as though it could shield her from everything chasing us. I wanted to tell her it would be all right, but the words stuck in my throat. Even I didn't believe them. Then the stars shifted. The black curtain of space peeled away, and there it was, Earth. My home. Blue and green and white, alive in a way no other world could match. The oceans shimmered like liquid sapphire, clouds curling like brushstrokes across its surface. It looked untouched, eternal, almost holy. Lyra gasped, her hand rising to the glass as if she could touch it. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling silently down her pale cheeks. She whispered something in her own language, a word the translator patch didn't even try to catch, a sound too full of wonder to be translated. For the first time since I'd met her, her fears seemed to fall away, replaced by something brighter than any star outside. When we landed, the hatch opened to the raw breath of earth. Wind rushed in, carrying scents she had never known, salt from the sea, the sharp green of grass, the cool damp of soil. She stepped out slowly, knees shaking, and when her feet touched the ground, she collapsed forward. Her fingers dug into the grass, clutching it like treasure. Then she laughed and sobbed in the same breath, her voice breaking against the rhythm of the waves. She was no longer just a refugee. She was someone who had touched her dream. Her dream didn't end when her fingers sank into the grass. If anything, that was only the beginning. For days, I watched her move through earth as if she were walking through the pages of a story she'd written for herself. She tilted her face to the sun, blinking against its warmth, stood in the rain with her arms wide, laughing as it soaked her clothes, pressed seashells against her ear to hear the ocean whisper inside. Every small moment felt monumental to her, and through her eyes, I began to see my own world differently, less ordinary, more alive. We traveled along the coast, keeping to places where no patrols would find us. At night, she'd sit beneath the stars, staring so long I wondered if she was afraid they might vanish. She spoke quietly about her people, about how they were taught Earth was forbidden, a paradise they would never touch. And now she was here, living proof that the impossible could be broken. But reality pressed close. I knew the authorities would come eventually. A human with an alien fugitive. It was a crime that wouldn't be ignored. Each passing day tightened the noose. Yet when I looked at Lyra, I realized I didn't care about the cost anymore. Some things are worth the fire. So I made her a promise. I told her that one day, her story would be known, not as an enemy's tale, not as a forbidden dream, but as proof that hope can outlive war. She listened, tears shining in her eyes, and whispered, "Then they'll know a human gave me my dream." And in that moment, I understood the truth. I hadn't just found her diary. I had found the reason I was still alive, to protect her dream, whatever it took.